It's the top of the 9 o'clock hour, which means we love checking in with our professor, Jeff Stein, who is talking about something that has Iowa relations today that happened on this day. And I don't think it gets any more Iowa than talking about our farmers this morning. How are you doing, Professor?
I'm doing very well, but it's a little soggy over here.
I understand you. Same over here, but we can get through this. But we're going to be talking about something that has a major league anniversary. We're talking about of a somewhat unlikely group here in Iowa.
In one respect, likely, but in a broader respect, unlikely, Lou, because farmers, as we know by nature, they're a somewhat independent sort, sometimes going it alone when even working together might suit them better. But even more than a century ago, some Iowa farmers knew that there were strength to be found in numbers as they looked to market their products fairly. You can go back all the way to 1912, in fact, when a group of farmers in Clinton and Scott counties on the eastern side of the state came together. Now, that idea of farmers coming together spread to other counties, and in addition to farmers, bankers, lawyers, merchants, and even teachers joined the farmers in a common effort to help agriculture play its proper role in a stable economy.
So this wasn't just farmers. It was a group of a bunch of different people from a bunch of different professions.
Absolutely. And that was not easy to do when you consider the fact that communication was limited. Travel was difficult. It's not like you just hop in the car and drive. Certainly 100 years ago, you couldn't do that. But despite all of those challenges, on this date, December 27th of 1918, representatives from these groups from 72 of Iowa's 99 counties came together in Marshalltown, which again, state center notwithstanding, is sort of the center of the state for these sorts of gatherings. It was a cold and snowy day, not rainy, but they got together because they saw working together with this common vision and purpose could lead to better results than if they all worked separately.
Now, this makes a lot of sense in today's times, but we're talking back when it wasn't easy to travel, whether it was rain or snow or what was happening, or as you mentioned, Professor, you know, we didn't pick up our cell phones and say, hey, here's the meeting, are you coming on over? So they were still able to make all of this happened despite having that technology.
And it was a pretty good, productive meeting. They decided to form a new group. You might have heard of it, the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation, perhaps?
Yeah. I see the signs popping up on the roads all over the place, yeah.
Absolutely. Every farm driveway that you go by has a Farm Bureau member lives here sign. That's because 100 years ago on this very date, these folks got together, they approved a constitution and bylaws, they elected officers and board members. In fact, a fellow from Marshall County had the home field advantage on this one by the name of James Howard. He was elected the group's first president by those in attendance on this date 100 years ago. And in just its first year, the Iowa Farm Bureau lobbied state and federal legislatures, helped other ag-related organizations get established, and they played a key role in joining with other state groups to form the American Farm Bureau Federation. And of course, in that century since it was founded, much has changed in agriculture and society, obviously. But the common values, hard work, love of community, devotion to the land, those are still very much the same.
Now, you mentioned that 72 counties were represented in this group. Is there any indication of how many numbers of people there were that had this really strong showing?
No real firm numbers from back then, but we know now, after 100 years, there are some 135,000 member families.
Wow.
That's families. So then you add a spouse and children, etc. Look what an impact that has. 153,000 across the state, and membership in the Farm Bureau is still made up of a cross-section of Iowans from various industries, all with the common goal of furthering agriculture. Just the same as when a group of folks met in Marshalltown to form the original Iowa Farm Bureau Federation, and we mark the centennial 100 years ago this very day.
How about that? I had no idea it wasn't just farmers. I thought it was an exclusive organization for farmers.
Absolutely, and I love that you mentioned community being a part of this, Professor, because they still make that a stronghold, and not only the farmers of today, but future farmers, as they're the sponsor for the Boys State basketball tournament, wrestling tournament, the Iowa Hall of Pride, Iowa High School Athletic Association. I mean, they're not just looking at our farmers, and they're even showing that today. They're saying our up-and-coming individuals that are going to make an impact in our future, we're keeping an eye on them as well, helping out with concussions, making sure our students are continuing to be taken care of. This is all under their umbrella of what they even continue to do today. And of course, President Craig Hill kind of leading the way.
And of course, as you mentioned, all of the athletic tournaments, it makes perfect sense, because if we think about agriculture, we think about growing crops. Well, how about growing our young people? And so it's a perfect connection for the Farm Bureau to show that they have that confidence in the future. And again, if it isn't for the folks in town helping the folks in the country and vice versa, none of us survive in a state like Iowa.
Yeah, the most important crop of all, the youth here in the state of Iowa.
That's right.
How about that? But agriculture at the heart of everything.
And you know, you mentioned the crop of young people. Talk about hard to get the weeds driven out of that field of the young people. You can use all the chemicals you want, and still there's occasionally some weeds that crop in there, but all in all, pretty good.
Very nice, Professor. Well, I'm glad you gave us some statistics that I can now throw at President Craig Hill next time I see him at an event coming up that they're a part of. All right, wonderful information. We do it every single morning as part of Iowa Almanac here on our program. But if people want to continue on further, where can they get more details?
IowaAlmanac.com. That's the website with this story and all the others. And you might want to give at Iowa Almanac a follow on Twitter and Instagram as well.
There you go. Well, you have yourself a great new year, my friend, and we'll talk to you next year.
Wow, time flies. Yes, be safe, and we'll talk next year.
You haven't aged a bit, though, Professor, so we'll see you soon.
Well, that's the beauty of Skype. It has this filter.
There you go. All right, sir. Well, thank you so much, and great job again. Check it out, folks, IowaAlmanac.com. Well,
all right, be safe, guys.
All right,
Thank
buddy.
you, you too.
And happy